travel is only accessible for the rich. How do you feel about that statement? For me, I think it's mostly true, but really it depends how you define rich. In January of 2023, I stayed in Anchorage, Alaska, USA, for 3 full days and Banff, Alberta, Canada for 6 full days. I tried to spend as little as possibly possible, but I also wanted to go out and experience winter's natural beauty in those places. This is exactly how much I spent. Starting with Anchorage, the biggest challenge was finding things to do that weren't too expensive. The only truly free thing I found to do was the Tony Knowles Coastal Trail, a walking path that goes by the city and the water. It's pretty scenic, pretty nice, but other than that, I wasn't really interested in much within the city, and outside of the city, I wanted to go with a guide just because Alaska, I heard stuff about bears, and when I went, bears were hibernating anyway, so it wasn't really a problem, but still, I just felt more comfortable going with a guide. So those 2 activities I did was the Matanuska Glacier Tour, which was $325, and a tour of the Turnagain Arm, which was $115. For my hotel, I stayed at Ramada by Wyndham for 4 nights, and the total of that was $275. For food, I went to a convenience store and I bought stuff for $27. I had a microwave and a mini fridge in my hotel room, so I just used those. I did buy beer. I'm a really big craft beer person and I like seeing how it varies from place to place. So I spent $15 on beer. The only additional cost was a $5 tip for my Turnagain Arm tour. I should have tipped both times, but I didn't think about it the first time. So if you were my guide and you see this, sorry you all. I didn't have to pay for transportation back and forth between the airport and the hotel because it's a service my hotel provided for free. The total I spent in Alaska was $762. Of course, in Canada, they use Canadian dollars, but I'm going to say the following prices in US dollars because most of my audience is from the US. I'm from the US and it's for me to know for my own bank account reasons. And third, so we can compare it to Alaska. We can have one currency across the board. Activities were much cheaper because I didn't go on a tour, but to rent ice skates, to take a bus back and forth between Lake Louise 2 times, and going to the hot springs and renting a towel, and the bus back from the hot springs, all those things only costed $54. I stayed in a hostel, and for 7 nights, it was $256. Now for food, I went to a grocery store again and spent $27 again. How cool is that? What a coincidence. Except, then I bought a sandwich for $5. So really, the total of my food in Canada was $32. But that would be cool if it was the same in both, wouldn't it? I did get some beer again, and I got it from the bar that was attached to my hostel, which also served poutine. So I lumped it into one category. So the total I spent on beer and poutine was $32. But that's 4 pint glasses and 2 meal-sized portions of poutine, so it's pretty good. Getting to and from the airport was pretty pricey because it was an hour's drive, so I got a shuttle and it was $110. Someone I met in Canada said they used an app where you met up with people going the same direction and then you just split gas. I heard of that, but I didn't really feel super comfortable with it yet. But if you're planning a trip, especially if you have more than one person, that'd probably be a good idea. So the whole total for Canada was $484. Now, bear in mind, I spent a lot more time in Canada, but it was not having to pay for guided activities that really saved me a lot of money. Moving on to the in-between costs, this is probably going to be a lot different if you're planning a similar trip because you might live closer or you might live farther away than I do. But for me, all 3 flights were about $250 each. I think the first one was $230, the second one was a little over $250, the third one was a little over $250. But because of those cheaper flights, I did have layovers and I let myself get a meal at the airport sometimes. On the way to Alaska, I had to have 2 meals because it was an 8-hour layover and I spent $23. My food between Alaska and Canada was $14, and so far the total would be $784, but on my trip home from Canada, a layover turned into an overnight stay, and It's this whole big long story. I'll make a short about it if you're interested, but if you're not interested, I'll just go on with the rest of this video. The airline was supposed to cover my hotel, transportation to the hotel, and a meal. But for transportation to the hotel, I spent like an hour calling and calling and calling them. I looked on Google to see if I could find a new number, trying any option I could think of. But at that point, it was like 10 or 11 at night, and I was like, forget it, I just want to go to bed. So I called a Lyft, and that cost $23. But apparently, there are 2 Super 8 motels close to the airport, and I went to the wrong one. So I had to pay $20 again to go to the right one. I also spent $6 for dinner. I got in and out. That was a stressful day. Anyway, I spent $8.83 on my whole in-between costs, flight and food and chaos. Now, you might be thinking, yeah, but what if you want to go on a trip where you do nicer activities, you eat at local restaurants, you don't stay in the cheapest place possible? I feel like I say this in so many of my videos, but I like to think in terms of do what you can while you can. And you never know what's going to happen in the future. I would rather go see a place on the cheap than maybe never see that place at all. Like when I was in Arizona living in my van, this is after my 48 state road trip, but I was living in my van in Arizona and I was like, why not go see Mexico? I went to a town called Nogales. It was a border town and it was cute, but there wasn't a lot of like touristy things to do. Also, you had to pay like $30, I think, to take your car across the border. So I was like, I'll just walk. And it was raining. Not that I'm an expert, but I feel like Mexico is known for being dry. And I was there on the one day it rained. But anyway, now I can say I went. And if you're a regular viewer, you might be thinking, what? When was that? Well, surprise, I haven't shown it yet. It was the same week that I filmed my Christmas special and I only had time to edit one. The timing of it just didn't work out, so think of it as a From the Vault video. I'll put it up on Saturday morning. Hope to see you then.